Hi everyone, welcome to another video. I hope you enjoyed your holidays. So in this video for today, we're going to be discussing about Vue reactivity and what exactly do we mean by Vue reactivity? How does Vue.js react to data mutations? How does it access data from the setup, the script setup, and all of those kind of stuffs? And in Vue.js, we have several ways to play around with data. We have the Vue ref, which holds data and which allows you to also mutate data. We also have the Vue reactive. So today's video is going to be giving us like a breakdown of how and when to use the ref and also when to use the reactive. Now, like I said earlier, the both of them out helps you to hold data, also mutates data and all those kind of stuffs. Now, when you deal with nested objects, when you deal with arrays, when you deal with string numbers and other kind of data types, what exactly is the best strategy or the best method to work with? That's what this video is going to be talking about. So join me as I explain to you the whole process behind Vue Ref and Vue Reactive in Vue.js. All right, so now we have a project which I just bootstrapped. This project is just like a new project that had nothing inside of it at all. This is basically just a simple Vue application that currently just shows us this thing called Welcome to my Vue app. And I'm going to be using this particular project folder to like explain to you the whole idea behind ref and reactive. Now, one thing you should know is the both of them actually uses or helps you to hold data. That's what the both of them do. And there are several ways, to use the both of them. Now, the most important thing here is when do you use ref, when do you use reactive, what's the best way or the best one to use depending on the logic you're working on and all those kind of stuffs. Now, the first thing you definitely need to know is you would have to import them like this, definitely. And now, one thing you should take note is when you use ref, you are able to play around with data that are single data types or simple data types like integer, numbers, strings, booleans, all those kind of data. You can be able to play around with them. But when you use reactive, reactive does not give access to you mutating or manipulating or dealing with data types like that's the primitive data types like the Boolean, the strings, and the rest of them like that. When you use reactive, you're basically dealing with nested objects, normal objects, arrays, nested arrays, objects in arrays, maps, sets, those kind of data types are what you deal with when you use reactive. But let's look at some practical approach of how to make use of two of them. Now we have a number here. Well, we have a variable called count, and this variable is going to be holding a data which is 0. Now, for us to access this data in our HTML, that's the template area, we already have count holding data of ref. Now, when we do something like this and say count value is, and we put count, if we save this and try to see what we have in our application, you find out we have 0. Now, because we're using ref, you might be wondering, why don't we do something like count.value, or count.current, like the way React works? But that's not what exactly how Vue deals with, ref. And the reason is very simple, because when you use setup here inside of your script, it already bootstraps behind the scene a boilerplate of you not having to do all of these things like this, not having to return data, all those kind of stuffs. Now, because we're already using setup here, we wouldn't have to do the manual setup of we having to return some data and all of those kind of things. Now, you find out that if we try to update this data, let's assume we have button and we have update count. Now, we'll pass an on-click value here, and we call this count plus plus. So now let's see what we get now. If we click on this, we begin to update the count. Now you can see the count value keeps getting updated. As long as we click on that, it keeps getting updated. Now that's a very simple approach to you being able to, update the value of the count. And why are we able to use this? Because the count happens to be holding a number or an integer. But when you use reactive, you cannot be able to deal with primitive data types like numbers or integers. Now, let's try something with reactive.
let's have something like this. Okay, let me just have this, and instead of ref, we'll have reactive, and we do this. Let's now try and see if we get something. Now you find out that nothing happens even when you click on the button. Let's see if we get any error on our browser. Okay, we don't get an error, but it's quite clear that the value of the count cannot be updated basically because that value is reactive. And reactive, like I said earlier, does not work with primitive data types like this. Even if you change this to, let's say, hello world, let's say we have hello world here, and here we update count. Instead of count plus plus, we're going to name this, let's say, greeting. And here we're going to call greeting. Then instead of this, I'm going to just call update greeting. Then we'll call this function inside of here, just for us to be sure that the function works. I'm just going to put an alert here that says, hey. Now, if we save this and try it again, we should see that when we click on update count, we get hey. That means our function works, right? But now let's try to see if we can update this hello world to something else. But remember, hello world is wrapped in a reactive and not a ref. So if we do this inside of here, we can decide to say greeting dot value, or let's just say greeting equals to hey. Now, if we save this, you find out that this is not going to update and might even throw an error to us. But no, we don't have any error, but it doesn't update. Now, if we try to change this to a ref, and here we change this from greetings to greetings.value equals hey. Now, when we try this now, we found out that when we click on this, we get this. Now, why are we getting this? Because our ref is able to hold values that are primitive, just like the way we have the count earlier on. Our ref was able to hold that, but our reactive was not able to hold that. Now we've spoken so much about ref, reactive. Now let's look at reactive in another sense. Let's look at something that has to do with reactive. Now let's have an object that says name as John Doe and hobby as playing. Now we have those two objects in the ref, and we decide to update the name to something else. Let's say we update the name to Alex Spark. You find out that with the ref we can be able to update this name for sure. So let me just have this as name of user is, so yeah, I'm gonna have name prop. So we have name props dot name. Okay, so now if we check this, we'll find out that when we update this, we have name.user is John Doe. If we click on update, we get name of user is Alex Spark. All right. And now we find out that our data has been able to, update successfully. Now let's try that with reactive. Now, if we try with reactive, and here we do something like name props dot name. Now, what you find out is when we try to use ref, let me just finish up this so I can explain that part. Now, when we try this, we'll find out that we have, we have the same thing changing. Now, you find out that we're dealing with an object and we're able to, mutate that object or change the value of the object, both in a ref state and in the reactive state. But you find out something that when you use the reactive, you are able to access the object properties directly inside of the object's name, which is name props. Unlike when we used ref, where we had to do name props dot value dot name, you get. But in reactive, you don't have to do that because the reactivity allows you to update a particular properties of an object directly within the property name. Now we've been able to show you an example in and how to play around objects. And like I said, reactive is not just, an object alone. You can do that with arrays of objects, arrays of arrays, and all those kind of stuffs. You can use all of that in reactive and also in ref. But now this brings us to the question. Since ref can do the job, why do we need to use reactive? Or since reactive can do the job of updating, objects, properties, array properties, why do we need to use ref? But this is the difference between the both of them. Now, the ref is used to hold values and could be mutated, definitely. It causes the DOM to trigger the change. So which means when you make a change in your ref, the DOM triggers that change. You get to see that change immediately when the next life cycle happens. So, which for example, it means is if you make a change to your ref in, let's say, update or before update, the change in the ref shows in the DOM when the update happens or when the updated life cycle happens. It holds, any kind of data type. The ref holds any kind of data type, be it arrays, be it objects, be it strings, integers, whatever. It holds them. And it could also hold deeply nested objects and arrays. Now, to the reactive side, the reactives are basically JavaScript object proxies. If you check the Vue documentation, you're going to see something like that. The reactive is basically, it's kind of a JavaScript object proxies, and it behaves kind of like the normal JavaScript. And its uniqueness is the fact that the Vue is able to intercept the access and mutation of all properties. So you can be able to access the properties in a reactive directly, just like what we had here. You could see that, we had name props.name. We didn't have to go into value before we could access name and all those kind of stuff, but reactive only works for nested data types like objects, arrays, maps. It doesn't work for string, it doesn't work for numbers, it doesn't work for integers. Now, the question might pop up, can you use any of them? At some point you can, but it's always quite advisable to always make use of the ref because the ref allows you to play around with or hold or manipulate different kind of data types, unlike the reactive that doesn't give you that kind of access. But there are some edge cases where you would have to make use of the reactive. But the goal of this video is to show you a practical approach of the both of them so that you can have a better understanding of how to manipulate data using the ref and the reactive. Now, that's basically all I intend to explain to you in this video. If you love this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, share this video with other front-end engineers who use Vue.js or intend to use Vue.js. And let me have your comments in the comment section of anything you feel you want to add or anything you feel was omitted. And I'm going to, attend to them. And I think that's basically all. I would see you in the next video.